I'm with Jonathan Miles from Shevet Achim. Now, Jonathan, what is Shevet Achim?
Shevet Achim, first of all, is the Hebrew phrase from Psalm 133, "Behold how good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell together in unity." And that's a theme verse for a Christian community here in Jerusalem that is attempting to love God and to love our neighbors together. Very specifically, we're bringing children from Gaza and from Iraq into Israel, across the borders, Muslim children, into the Jewish state, to the doctors who are willing to help save their lives through open-heart surgery. And there we see the brothers living together in unity. We see people coming together in order to save the life of a child, and we really see what a blessing that is.
So these children that are coming in from particularly places like Gaza, are these life-saving operations?
Very much so, yeah. There's a child just born today, and we're working on an emergency ambulance to get that child into the hospital in Israel tomorrow on his second day of life. He needs a surgery within about 2 weeks in order to live, and he can be healed. He can have a normal and meaningful life, but the medical care that can make that possible does not exist in the Gaza Strip. So if these neighbors don't come together, that child won't live.
So this basically, this child will die if he doesn't get this operation.
No question.
Now, is it easy getting kids out of Gaza? I imagine you need lots of permissions and things like that.
There is a fair bit of bureaucracy. The policy of the Israeli military forces, however, is any life and death case they will allow to pass, even in the worst of times. So you have to know how to use the system. You need to know the paperwork. You got to work at it, but it will happen, and it does happen every week. There's at least 10 kids coming out of Gaza.
How long has the organization been working, and how many children have you ministered to?
We started this in 1994. It really wasn't any plan of ours, working with Russian Jews coming here as new immigrants, but it was encountered by a woman who had her son trying to save his life, and about that same time started going into the Gaza Strip for the first time, and my eyes were really opened with that first boy who came. I went to the hospital to see what it would take to help him, and the doctor said, I have to tell you one thing, he could be dying in the doorway of the emergency room, and we won't let him in the door until every dollar's been paid. And I think that was a gift to me to state it so clearly. That's the truth, actually, of what's happening all over the world, that we could have medical care in our hands and turn away a beautiful child just because of the financial status or the national status. But if we, as followers of Jesus, if we're unwilling to look the other way and pass by on the other side of the road, but we stop and get involved, we can be just a little catalyst, a little bit of salt and light. And I see in the case of every child we help, all kinds of people will come and work together to save the life of a child. And so we've seen that happen many, many times. In fact, we don't even count how many kids anymore.
Must be a lot of numbers, though, is it?
Well, praise to God. He knows his sheep, and he goes and looks for them and finds them. Yeah.
Now, you're a Christian organization. Is it Christian children that you're helping and working with?
Practically never, just because there's so few Christians in these countries we're serving. Very few in Gaza, a few more in northern Iraq, but probably 98% of the kids we've been helping are Muslim children.
So you're a Christian organization ministering to Muslim children?
Well, with the help of Jewish doctors. So it's really breaking down barriers. And there's a statement in it, which is, look, we are all made of the same stuff. We're all in the need of God's grace. We do find it very clearly in the Messiah, and we are very clear about that. He's the reason we live. He's the reason we're able to be here. We're not good people. We're bad people who've been mercifully touched by the Savior. So people from all different backgrounds finding that we can work together around saving the life of a child. I would say for the Muslim families we work with, it's a very moving experience to come into the hospital. They'll be in a bed next to a Jewish child, and they'll see the doctors valuing them exactly the same as this other child. The value of the life is the same. They're respected. They're treated as if they matter. And that is a very healing thing to their souls and their spirits, because they've lived in a situation, in a culture that has always told them, you're not really important, you're forgotten, unless you have money or influence, nobody cares about you. And just to encounter that unconditional valuing, love, you could say even, moves them very much. They always say they're amazed. They treated me just like the Israeli child. And I love to hear them say that because they're encountering the heart of God and how he wants us to live with each other.
Now, it's very expensive, of course, to do an operation. How do the hospitals and the Israeli doctors help in doing that?
That's really a key because we couldn't even come close to affording to do this. An open heart surgery in our home countries in the West would just to pull one of those off in a year would exhaust our resources, wouldn't it? Probably $100,000, maybe 70,000 pounds. But the hospitals here, number one, the medical care is quite a bit lower cost on the face of it here than in the West. Still world-class, excellent care. Secondly, the hospitals are one of our partners, and the baseline is the cost that it would be for an Israeli child to get in there, and then they take another 50% off of that. And so they're willing to receive foreign children at half of their price cost, which is a huge contribution from the hospitals. And the doctors who take all this on, there's one group of doctors, they've even formed a charity at the Wolfson Medical Center here called Save a Child's Heart. And they bring children from all over the world who need heart surgery. And they're out raising funds and really giving up their lives. I mean, they have no life. They have so many, these desperately ill kids. They're constantly on call. They're constantly sleeping at the hospital, fighting for the life of a little refugee child who means nothing to nobody, yet these doctors are laying down their lives to try to save them. It's very impressive and challenging, even to us as followers of the Lord. Are we laying down our lives the way these doctors are?
And for you as an organization, are you living by faith in paying for these operations because you put a lot of money and finance towards these young children as well?
Well, we really are. From the very first child, the amount of money that was needed was large. We had nothing. If we just walked by our understanding, none of this would have ever started. It really was a matter of trusting God and saying, all right, I can't see it, but I'm not going to tie your hands, God. You have unlimited resources. We'll take a step. I'll share the story, and we'll see what you can do. And when you free God up, he'll do anything. And so until today, we try to, for each child who's coming, we try to build a funding coalition, a little bit from the family maybe, some from us, some from the doctors in the hospital, some from an organization in their home area. Usually we still fall short, and the hospitals we work with, particularly the one, the Wolfson and the Save a Child's Heart group, we have such a relationship of trust that they believe with us that it's going to come good. So we come to the end of the year and we often have a big final bill, like this is what we got to do to clear the year's account. We just had one of those situations a few weeks ago. And we prayed, we shared the need with others, and some contributions came in, not nearly enough. I had already written the check to them. Yeah. And somehow, the day that the check came due, we checked the bank, and I say, Lord, I really don't understand how you do this, but there's enough money in the bank to cover that check. And that happens all the time, actually. And seriously, I don't even look too carefully into it. I don't want to know how that happens, but it happens. So the Lord keeps us going.
Yeah. And how does a family feel when they hear that their child has health problems? And how do they feel when they see a Christian organization and Jewish doctors want to help them?
Typically, I'll tell you truthfully, typically many of the families we help, especially in Gaza, the people will almost always say, you foreigners, or even you Jewish people, you're better people than we are, because nobody here would have helped us. And of course, that's a little painful to hear people saying that to you. And that's why I always come in and say, look, you need to understand, we're not good people. We're selfish and sinful people, just like every other human being on this planet. And if it were up to us, we wouldn't be here helping you. But God has touched our lives. He's shown us so much mercy. He's forgiven us such a huge debt that He's compelled us to go out and share some of His love with others. And I think it's a good place to begin a conversation that we really need the people we work with to understand that we're right down there on their level, and this isn't one group of people helping another. This is God helping all of us.
Now, when you get the permissions for a child to come through, how long does it take from bringing him out of Gaza and giving them the operations and the aftercare?
Well, let's see. Usually, for a Gaza child, they'll come in maybe for a first appointment, go back home, come in for a catheter, go back home, come back for a surgery, unless it's one of these life and death emergencies. A lot of kids have a few years. I mean, you can save them within the first several years of life before they become inoperable. On the flip side of that, it's a very painful thing when they don't have access to medical care. Mom and dad are left watching their child very, very slowly die over years, getting weaker, getting bluer, becoming very attached to the child. It's just like the worst thing you can imagine as a parent. Not only that they're dying, but there is care out there. I just am too weak and poor of a parent to save my child. So the process can be stretched out over several months, even a couple of years, or in an emergency case, the next day they can be in surgery. We've had several children, even from Iraq, who have arrived here, basically collapsed on admission to the hospital, been rushed into the operating room that same night, and seen their lives really pulled out of the fire like that. So that's really gives us cause for gratitude when we see one of those.
Do you get to see many of these children years later?
We have made an effort to go down into Gaza and look up one little girl we hadn't seen for 5 years. She was the spindliest little baby, and 5 years later we went back, hadn't heard anything, hadn't seen anything. This beautiful, healthy kindergartner opens the door, and she's showing off how she's learning English in her school, and it's very, very touching, yes. So.
And why do you do what you do?
I think, first of all, obedience to the words of Jesus, not turning away from those who ask of you, not passing by those who we know have need, but say, well, I can't get involved in that. Really, to love your neighbor as yourself means anything I would do for my own child. In that case, I'm really called to do for my neighbor's child, and never say, well, that's not my business, or that's their problem. They are our brothers and sisters.
And what's your prayer for the children of Gaza?
My prayer for the children of Gaza is to grow up into a world of where they are free and healthy, where God's grace will abound more and more. Every single one of us needs to know God's grace. Us Christians need to know God's grace. We can sit in a church for all of our lives and not know the least thing about God's grace, and we can be trying to please Him through our religious observances just as much as any good Muslim or good Jew can. And to understand the Father's heart, that He loves us unconditionally, that He gave His Son to make everything right between us, that's my prayer for all of us to know.
And what's your website for people who'd like to know more?
It's simply shevet.org, SHEVET.org.
Okay, Jonathan, thank you very much.
God bless you, Paul. Thanks for coming.